Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to a model train autopsy. Today I've got an engine that is faulty and I'm going to investigate it and hopefully fix it. A few videos ago I did a review of this, the Hornby B12, a very beautiful locomotive, but as you'll know if you watched the review, it was faulty. And I actually bought two of these locos, one for me to review and another one to give away on my next series of live streams, and the second example was also faulty. Now I want to make it clear they were not dead, both engines worked, but their performance degraded as they ran in. They had very little torque, they slowed down, they got very hot, they drew too much current. Definitely faulty, no question about that. After the video, I put out a poll to find out how many other customers had had this issue, and of my sample it seems that most people who said they bought one of these B12s did have a fault with it. 170 people said yes, there was a fault, and 136 people said no, there was not a fault. Now I bought this from Hatton's, and of course it is a Hornby locomotive, so I contacted both companies. Hatton's said they didn't have any idea that these models were faulty, and Hornby also got back to me and said that these were not sold as seconds or faulty models. They too had no idea of the faults. I'm guessing that if enough of those people have returned their faulty models, then both companies should be aware of the faults by now. And sure enough, I only have one of these now. I kept this one to repair it, hopefully, and do an autopsy. The other one that I bought to give away is obviously not suitable for a giveaway, so I have sent that back and had a full refund. There are plenty of other people who have had serious problems, just like mine really, with the B12. One good person is Mike from Model Railways Unlimited, and you can see Mike's video up there. He's already done an autopsy on the motor of his B12 and he found a lot of interesting things inside it, so do check out Mike's video if you're interested. Today I am going to be taking out the motor from this B12 and doing a similar autopsy because we think it will be really interesting to see if the issues are the same between the two examples. You'll find out what those are in a little minute. And I thought I had some spares of the motors that go into these B12s, but unfortunately I don't anymore. I must have used the last one. So I am going to still try and repair this though. I've got a 3D printer, as you know, so I think I should be able to produce an adapter for this loco so that I can fit a cheap coreless motor inside. Not a brilliant motor, of course, but it should actually perform properly, unlike the original. So that's the plan for today. Let's start off though with a bit of an autopsy. Right, I think the loco is about ready for her surgery. She's in the cradle, ready to go. I think I'm going to just disassemble the loco, try and find what the matter might be, and I'm going to be very interested to see whether the issues with my B12 are the same as the ones Mike found inside his. So I'm going to get this apart. Okay, body's coming off, or is it? Yes, I think it is. And there we go. So there is the little blighter that I suspect is responsible for the issues. Of course, it's the motor. So I'm going to start to take this motor out. I mean, obviously this would usually take a bit of care, but I'm fully expecting to scrap this motor and put in a new one, so I don't have to be that careful with it. So I'm just going to lever it out, I think. Okay, and let's get my soldering iron switched on, and I will desolder the wires from it. This little thing is the drive shaft, so I need to keep this safe because I'll reuse this and create a new adapter for it so that a coreless motor can drive this loco instead. There it goes. And yeah, I mean, this looks like a great motor. I mean, it's very big and substantial. It's got a pair of flywheels. It is 5-pole. But for some reason, a lot of Hornby's locos that have this motor seem to have issues. The S15 is one that I've heard a lot of. Don't get me wrong, I've got several locos with this motor that are also just perfectly fine. But it does seem to be this one that crops up quite a bit. So I'm going to open up this motor. First though, I need to take off the flywheels so that I can get better access. Okay, I think that is job done. Slight new problem though, getting the flywheel off the tool I removed to remove the flywheel from the motor. Okay, no, that was easier than expected. Okay, so now I should be free to open up this motor and take my first look inside. Let's slip the front end of this motor off and let's take a look inside. So here is the armature, of course. This is what actually drives the loco. There's the commutator, very small thing there. I'm going to have to clean that up and then we'll take a much closer look at it and see if we can see any damage on there. Here are the brushes. I'm going to spread these apart so that we can actually investigate those a bit better. Right, well, I've just pulled the brushes off. As I say, I'm not planning to reuse this motor, so let's have a closer look at one of the brushes then, shall we? Let me just clean whatever debris on there. The first thing I notice about these brushes is that they are tiny. They are absolutely tiny, even compared with the size of the commutator, which means that all of the power from this locomotive is passing through that tiny area. And I think when Mike looked at his brushes, he found sort of strips of what looked like metal impurities inside his brushes in a sort of vertical fashion up and down the brush. I've got to say, this brush looks exactly the same. It looks as though there is metal inside it, which of course there shouldn't be. It should just be carbon. I suppose that could be some material from the commutator. I'm not saying that the brushes are necessarily filled with impurities, but it certainly looks that way. Let's take a look at the other brush, which I've actually managed to break off the brush holder. Yeah, doesn't look quite as bad, this one, but there is some sort of metallic shine coming out of there. So yeah, maybe Mike's onto something with that. Let's now clean up the commutator and see if we find any score marks on that, because that is another thing that Mike found in his video. I'm not seeing any major damage there. I mean, there's obviously a bit of a mark where the brushes have been moving, but that is fairly normal, I would say. It definitely doesn't look like the deep grooves that I saw on Mike's video. Maybe, if anything, there is slightly more discoloration here than I would expect after just an hour or so's running, but overall that would not normally ring alarm bells for me. Let's have another little test of the armature then. Let's test the actual resistance or the impedance of the coils, just to see if any of those might be faulty and causing the problem. Okay, so coil 1 is settling at around the 7.2 to 7.3 ohm area. Coil 2 is settling at around 7.7, 7.8 I saw. Let's try that again, yeah, 7.8 it looks like. So not very well balanced. I think they should be the same, should they not? This one's down at 7.4, 7.5, 7.4. Next one is at 7.5, so that's quite similar to the rest. So far we've only got one that's wildly above the rest. Ah, and there's a surprise. The last one is at more like 8 ohms, 8.2. So I am getting quite a range of values from the different coils, so could that be the reason? Like I say, I mean, these coils should be identical. It shouldn't be that one of them is almost an entire ohm higher than the rest. So could that be causing instability? I'm not sure, but there we go, that's a look at the armature. The last thing, well, there's quite a lot that Mike noticed, but the other thing that I want to look at that Mike noticed was the bearings. He said the bearings on each end of the motor were loose and free to move around, which he thought might have been causing friction on the motor, causing it to heat up and therefore damage itself. So let's see if mine have got any wiggle room to them. Yes, yeah, these bearings are not perfectly secure. They are able to move about a bit in their sockets, but I'm not sure if it's enough so that it's actually going to cause a problem when the armature's in there, because of course there are two of these bearings and they should hold each other steady. Let's see what the back one is like. Oh yeah, the back one has got a lot more movement. That one is totally free to turn and pivot. So that could be a possible problem, couldn't it? But either way, the motor is not looking good. I mean, I've ruined it in taking it apart. I knew I wasn't going to be reusing this. So if I ever want this loco to work again, I have no choice but to come up with an adapter to fit a cordless motor into this instead. So let's remove these screws. These are the screws that held the old motor cradle, and I think I will be getting rid of these. Well, I'll be getting rid of the old motor cradle. And there is a space into which I am going to have to try and fit a new motor. Interesting, it's a curved shape. That could be annoying, couldn't it? But anyway, I'm going to get my calipers, I'm going to measure this and see if I can come up with a new adapter so that I can change the motor. So this is my proposed design for the new motor mountings on the B12. The first piece is this barrel-shaped adapter, which fits into the slot where the old adapter would have been. And then on top of that can be screwed my traditional coreless motor adapter, which I've used many times on different locos. And then of course the third piece is the cover, which rather than clipping on as I've done in the past, has got a couple of screw holes at the back so that they can be screwed into place, which is a bit more secure than just using screws. The 3D printer is up and running, and those three parts are going to take about an hour to produce for all three. So I've got a little bit of time now to work on another adapter, which will allow me to connect this little drive shaft to the coreless motor. So I'm going to get on with that. So here it is. This is just a really miniature version of the old flywheel. Of course, this is not going to act as a flywheel. It's very light plastic. But this should allow the small 1mm shaft of the coreless motor to connect to the drive shaft of the rest of the gear train. So hopefully this will work. I will have to wait obviously for these parts to finish printing first, but once they are done I'll be able to print that, and then fingers crossed I'll be able to have a go at putting the B12 back together. Right, so I think I've got all of the parts I need now. They've all printed, and I think I'm just going to start putting this thing together. Hopefully these will all work and fit. Usually though, it will take me a few tries. I'll find that piece A or piece B doesn't fit together quite as well as it should, and it'll take a few revisions before it's perfect. But I'm hoping that this will be, well, I'm hoping that I've done it good enough so that they will at least go together and sort of work for a demonstration. So we've got the base adapter here, which is supposed to sit right in here. And as you can see, that seems to fit well. So I'm going to screw that in place. So that's in, that's nice and tight. And then the second piece is this. And I will actually have to go and get some screws to put into this. So this is just going to be playing it by ear, really. Let's try one of these screws, see if this will fit. I think it should. Yeah, that one's a little long, so let's try one that's a millimetre shorter than that. Great, yep, that one's better. Now this one. Okay, so that's the motor mount in place, I hope. So let's see if the motor itself is going to fit. There we go, that's where it's supposed to sit. And as you can see, the drive shaft here is about at the right level with the other reciprocating part, so that's great, that's going to be good. So now I've got this little adapter which is supposed to fit onto this coreless motor, so moment of truth, let's see if it does. Now it's just a case of trying to get this at the right sort of distance. Let's try and put that drive shaft in then. Where is it? So the big ball on the drive shaft goes into this end, my motor end, and the small end goes over into there. Okay, well that looks pretty good. Yeah, I won't lie, it does. That looks pretty good. Right, so I think that is the wiring done. So I've just got to make sure the wires are out of the way, and then I can start to try and put the top of my motor cover on, which should fit something like this. And it does. Nice. Let's try the same sort of size. All right, so there we go. That looks pretty good, I have to say. I mean, it looks good, but is it good? Is it actually going to work? Let's put the cover over the worm drive. And let's find out. I'm going to be ultra bold and put the body on before trying it. Silly idea really, but oh, why not? What the hell? Okay. There's been a lot of work leading up to this point. I think though I'm ready to put some power to the tender wheels and see if the loco is actually going to work now. Please do wish me luck, folks. This is no fake drama or anything. I genuinely haven't tried this yet, so here we go. All right, it's starting. Oh, that's pretty good. It's not too fast, is it? It seems like quite a sensible speed there. Awesome. So let's get this down onto the track and try it there. Okay, first track test with the new motor. Before I do though, a few things to remember. First of all, we are now running without flywheels. Unfortunately, they don't fit. They won't fit anymore with my new motor. Maybe I could develop a way to put flywheels back into this one day, but at the moment, this is going to be running without them. Second of all, it's a new motor, so this has not been run in yet. This is going to be, well, more or less its first ever run. And thirdly, as I found out when I did a bit of an experiment with cordless motor upgrades, I'll put a link to it up there, these new motors are not better than original motors. When a Hornby motor is not faulty, they're very good, very powerful, excellent crawlers. These cordless motors are cheap and they do work well, but they don't offer the same sort of torque and the same sort of low speed performance. So you're not going to be wanting to rip out working Hornby motors to replace them with a baby little cordless one. This is just something you can do in the event of a failure rather than buying an expensive new motor, which is also an option if that's what you decide to do. Anyway, let's set this to forwards then and see if it is going to work on track. See what the crawl is like to start with. These are pretty good crawlers with the original motors. That wasn't a great crawl of a start, was it? Let's try backwards. Oh, yeah, it doesn't seem to like crawling. So, yeah, it sucks in terms of crawling. That's true. How is it at a higher speed, though? Let's try it at a higher speed run past. Oh, that's all right. Yeah, so it's a good runner at higher speed, very much so. And I suppose it might get better at crawling as it's running. It's definitely not as good a performer as the original motor was. Right, let's go for some coaches then. Let's see if she can haul some. All right, let's see how we get on. Let's go for about half speed again. There we go. All right, here we go. Looking significantly faster than it did during the review, that's for sure. Obviously, struggling a little bit coming up there. It has slowed down noticeably, but not to the extent it was doing before. So perhaps I'll to strip down the loco and replace some of the grease. Maybe that will improve things a little bit, but like I say, these motors are not as good as a fully working original. So I think I've mastered motor replacing with these little cordless motors, and this was a good starting point because these motors are so tiny you can easily fit them into any other loco. But I think the next thing I need to do is to find another motor that is equally readily available, good and inexpensive, but perhaps a slightly better performer, one with better low speed performance, one that can crawl better, and then start trying to implement that into some locos, and then I think we would start to really see some performance improvements. But this isn't too bad, you know, it's a very, very inexpensive motor. It's been a cheap fix on this loco, which was a very cheap buy. But I'm interested to see what I can do next. Yeah, hopefully I can better it. But this has been fun, it's been a good experiment. Yeah, perhaps wait a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily recommend replacing motors with this cordless one, particularly in this case. It's a big heavy loco. It's clear that it doesn't have the same amount of torque as a good working motor, so yeah, it's not something I'd really recommend, but it has been a fun project and it has been useful for learning what's needed in replacing these motors. So with a better motor, like I say, I think even more improvements could be brought about. For now though, thank you very much for watching. Drop a comment if you've got any thoughts on this, and I will see you very, very soon. Alright, cheers everybody, take care.